Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm reviewing the new fountain pen from Endless, and this is the Phantom, and this is one of their retractable fountain pens. Now this was a project that started on Kickstarter and has sort of gone into full production now. What I have here is a lovely transparent blue version. As I said, this is a retractable fountain pen, so it's got a knock on the end there and the nib comes out the front. What I'm going to do today is talk about the parts and features. I'll do a writing sample, all of that kind of stuff, and then I will talk about some pros and cons of the pen. So firstly, as I said, this started on Kickstarter. They did create a retractable fountain pen a little while ago, and this is kind of like the evolution of that. They've spent quite a while coming up with the design and developing the design, keeping it really nice and simple. And I think this has a really cool sort of sporty kind of vibe. I know that's the kind of sort of look that they were going for, and I think they've really pulled it off well. There are a couple of different versions, the clear version, solid black, all that kind of stuff. As I said, this is the transparent sort of blue version of it. So let's start at the top of the pen. First thing is the hole where the nib comes out. Now the way that this particular one works, the camera won't pick it up, but there's like a little silicone flap on the inside of the nib, the tip there, and it's got a slit down the middle. As you click the knock, the nib protrudes through those that opening. That then, when it's closed, seals up and then keeps the nib wet, and it does an okay job. I've not had too much of an issue with this. If you're using this pen regularly, you're not going to have issues with things like drying out. If you leave it for maybe like a few days to a week, you might start to get a little bit of sort of like a hard start, but generally speaking, these sorts of pens, these are everyday carry, quick use, pens that you're using sort of throughout the day, so you shouldn't have too much of an issue. The pen body is made of acrylic, and it's got a clip that attaches on, and you can take that off if you wish. The pen swells to the center where it opens up to allow you to fill it and all those kinds of things. And then it tapers to this sort of shiny chrome colored plastic knock with this nice sort of slant on it, which I find very nice as a place, sort of for your thumb to sit. It's got quite a lot of movement on the knock, and it's not like the tightest tolerance, but it's very comfortable and very easy to use. As I said, you can you open the pen in the middle here, and it shows you the cartridge converter system. So this is a standard international converter. It's a smaller one. It's one of those sort of push-pull ones. So you've got like a little piston that runs up and down in the top of it there, and then you've got like the nib here, which is a nice long tubular narrow nib. We've seen these kinds of nibs on a range of different pens from different brands, including the ones from Endless. It's a nice sort of system and allows for they're pretty decent nibs, and it's got a decent feed on it there as well. You can see these little raised sections on the mechanism here. They fall into slots on the inside of the barrel. There's a spring and everything down in the barrel, as well as the silicone little cap there. That fits in there, and then you just screw the body back on. Now you can use this pen with a cartridge, and this is the packaging. I'll sort of take it out. So it comes with a cardboard box with this little internal section here. It's got a lot of good information about how to use and how to fill the pen, all that kind of stuff, and then what to do if you're wanting to use an ink cartridge instead of the converter. And in the packaging, which is this nice sort of cork holder, if you will, is you get the little adapter here, if I can get it out. There we go. That's the adapter that you put behind the cartridge, which allows you to sort of just make up the space there. One of the cool things about this packaging is the fact that when you turn it upside down, firstly, you've got the Endless logo there, but it ends up being a nice little desk stand for the pen as well. So I like it when packaging is sort of multifunctional like that. So the Endless Phantom fountain pen comes in extra fine, medium nibs, as well as like a couple of sort of little specialty nibs depending on what's available at any point. Now, unless I'm missing something, I haven't been able to find any element on this pen that tells me, or on the packaging, for that matter, as to what my pen's nib size is. This was sent to me by Endless for this review, and so I'm placing this sort of between a fine and a medium. It's either a slightly broad fine or a slightly fine medium, but as I said, it comes in extra fine, fine, medium, and then some specialty nib sizes. So that's the basics of the pen, and before we get into the size comparison and all of that, let's quickly talk about the price. Now, this is listed at full price on the Endless website when it's available for $49 US, which I don't think is too bad a price point. It places it like cheaper than things like, obviously, like the Vanishing Point, including the steel nibbed versions of the Vanishing Point. It's cheaper than things like the Platinum Curadas, but it is obviously a lot more expensive than a range of the Chinese retractable fountain pens that are on the market from brands like Jinhao and Mahjong. But is it any better? Is it any worse? Well, I think in terms of build quality, it's made well. I think, but then again, so are some of those Jinhaos and things like that. I think this is an okay price point. I think in comparison to, like the more expensive options that are on the market, this is a good option. But I think what you're paying for is sort of the experience with Endless as well. They spend time creating and designing and doing something original, which is a lot more than some of the Chinese brands do with their versions. So yeah, it's sort of priced in the middle of all of those. Okay, for the size comparison, I've got it here alongside a standard Lamy Safari, as well as the Pilot Vanishing Point or capless, depending on where you are in the world. You can see it's sort of about the same length as, well, all of them really. It's perhaps slightly longer than the Pilot and the Lamy here. Obviously, the Lamy does, have a cap, so when it's uncapped, it's a little bit shorter, but it does post, making it a little longer there, obviously, and with the nibs out of these two options here, you can see the Lamy is considerably longer, as would most capped fountain pens, but in terms of the retractable fountain pens here, once again, the Pilot and the Endless are pretty similar. Okay, specific dimensions here for the Endless Phantom. We've got 144 millimeters when it is nib retracted. When the nib is out, it's 138. So we lose quite a lot of length here off the back of the nock. It is still very, it's still a great size pen. As I said, there is some movement in that nock, so it's not sort of held in place. But it's a nice size pen. It fits well in the hand. It's very comfortable to write with. Obviously with any of these retractable fountain pens that have a clip, so the clip is designed so that when it's in your pocket, obviously, nib up or in, a case or something. And that's, the best placement for it in a lot of ways, but it's not going to be for everyone in terms of how they hold the pen. And I've always had a bit of an issue with those clips there, but there's something about sort of the weight of this pen and how easy it is sort of to write with that I don't feel it as much as even I sort of feel the clip in the way on something like the Pilot Vanishing Point. This feels like it needs a little bit more work, the heavier body. The nice lightweight of the acrylic and everything on this makes it just a little bit more comfortable in my opinion. Now, around the grip section, you go from about 11 to 13 millimeters. So, it's a quite a comfortable sort of size. And at the widest point of the pen, it's about just under 14.5 millimeters. It is lightweight-ish. It weighs 20.5 grams. And, that's the same regardless. That's inked as well. And it's, it's very nice, comfortable size in the hand. Okay, let's do a writing sample now with the Endless Phantom retractable fountain pen. This has a steel nib, so this is probably a fine or a medium. I'm tending to lean towards it being a fine. But it's it's a nice smooth fine. The ink I have in this today is Endless Alchemy. This is Raven Blue. I think this ink is awesome. I have loved using this ink in this pen, both from the perspective of it being a nice pen to write with and also a nice ink, but there's something, this ink is, it's got this lovely sort of rich, dark, sort of almost blue-black gray sort of undertone, which I think, like, although it doesn't quite match the blue or the transparent blue, it sort of ties in nicely with it. Okay, let's do some writing. So it is a relatively stiff nib, and that's okay. It writes very smoothly, and it writes relatively wet. Reverse writing is okay. I wouldn't say flexing this is a great idea. There is a little bit of like just ever so slight sort of bounce, but that I think is the mechanism, not so much the actual like nib itself. You know, obviously the mechanism is all sort of springs and things like that, so there's going to be a little bit of sort of natural movement perhaps. Quick writing. No issues. I've not had any problems with this sort of hard starting or anything while it's been writing. As I said, the only issues I've had are things like the, you know, if you leave it for a few days, you might have like a character or two in your writing that just sort of need a little bit more work, and then it writes perfectly smoothly and fine again. That silicone internal little sleeve or flap opening door thing does do the job, particularly, as I said, over sort of the short term. I haven't done a long-term dry out test on this pen. I plan on making a video where I review a number of the retractable pens I have looked at. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but I would like to sort of do that. But as you can see, this one writes well. It's got a nice sort of flow, nice crisp fine line, and I think the fact that it is a relatively stiff nib plays into its favor on this instance, because as an everyday quick writer, you know, you just want it to be able to do the job, and this always does. Okay, so what are the pros and cons of the Endless Phantom fountain pen? Well, firstly, I want to say I think the packaging is a big pro. Like, obviously, you know, the pen comes in here, but having that little extra little desk stand, that's a nice touch. I like it when companies think like that. You're not just sending a pen out in something that protects it, which is obviously the main idea, but you're sending the pen out in something that can then be used and, you know, not just sort of thrown away. I think the nib is really nice. It writes well, it writes smooth. It's slightly stiff, but it absolutely does the job. It's a nice price point. I think the design is really simple and nice. The internals are all nice and simple. I like the slant on the nock. I do find that very comfortable to use, which is great. The clip is functional, if that's what you decide to use. So lots and lots of pros here. There are a couple of little niggles I have. You know, there are some signs of sort of manufacturing a few little seams and things like that that can, you know, could be buffed out if needed. I think little, I always have an issue with these silicone rubber doors. Like, are they going to last? Am I going to have to replace this at some point? Can I even replace this at some point? I'm not sure. So, you know, like, it's something that can wear out. It's not like a little metal door that opens up. You actually like opening out little, you know, a little door, rubber door. So that's something to be aware of. I think some people who find the clip in the way, particularly left-handed writers, that's always going to be an issue, so that's something to be aware of. And then the only other sort of issue I actually have is this converter. Now, I don't mind push-pull converters. A lot of people sort of bag them out and say, this isn't my favorite, and I don't mind as long as it does the job, but this has a very small in capacity. And, you know, you change over to a cartridge and you use that little metal, you know, adapter there, great. But if I wanted to put a new converter in this pen, is it going to fit? I'd have to find the right converter, one that, you know, fits the dimensions, fits the needs. And like, because this is feels kind of specific, like, you know, it's got, I don't know, like, and so I haven't tried that, but that is always a worry when something comes with a converter that is relatively proprietary or not just like a standard one off the shelf. Does it need to be a particular size to fit in that back mechanism there? You know, like, am I going to be able to replace that if I wanted to without just changing over to cartridges? So that's just something that it's not necessarily a con, it's something that I'm aware of when I get a pen like this and think of, you know, what it will, you know, the long-term use of it. Long-term, obviously, is the plastic going to hold up? You know, we're going to get cracking, all that kind of thing. that's yet to be seen. As I said, a longer term dry out test sort of will be coming. But in terms of this review, having used this pen now for a couple of weeks, I really enjoy it. I find it very comfortable. I've enjoyed, the feel of it in my hand. I've enjoyed the mechanism. And as I said, if you're using it pretty consistently, I've not had any problems with, hard starts and there's definitely never issues with like ink starvation or anything like that. So it's a good pen that writes well. It's at a decent price point, and I think Endless are doing interesting things, and I'm really excited about sort of where they go in their pen journey. They've made a few pens now, and I think this is showing clear signs of real ideas from them, which is great. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, hit the notifications button, all that kind of stuff. If you've got products you think I should be looking at, or if there's a way you'd like to support my channel, I would really love to hear from you. Another big thank you to Endless for providing this pen for this review. I'll link to their website down below, and their pens are available at a range of retailers and things. So just sort of check all that out. So enjoy your pens, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.